Welcome to Barnyard Language. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language. Honest talk about running farms and raising families.
In case your kids haven't already learned all the swears from being in the barn, it might be a good idea to put on some headphones or turn down the volume. While many of our guests are professionals, they aren't your professionals. If you need personalized advice, consult your people. Oh, we're just doing it, aren't we? Okay, well, welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language with no warm-up at all. Katie just hit the record button, so here we go.
Otherwise, Arlene, we end up like 5 minutes into catching up, and then I'm like, well, shit, we should have saved all this for the update. So this way it'll be...
Yeah, we could have recorded this.
Yep, this way it'll be fresher.
Katie, what's the lambing report?
We are, knock on wood, done with lambing. We have one elderly ewe who is hopefully not bred. But everybody else has done the thing. We have, I think Jim said 67 lambs, or possibly 76. It was early. I don't know.
Yeah, one of those two numbers in some combination.
A lot. Out of approximately 35 ewes, but a number of them are yearlings, so we only expect singles. Otherwise, we expect twins. We had one set of quads and a couple sets of triplets. We had a new calf yesterday, and it's supposed to warm up next week, so that's very exciting.
Nice.
Other than that, that's basically it.
No kid news? Been doing anything adorable lately?
One of my boy child inquired if we could borrow my friend Susie's husband to make us some more babies, so that was a little bit awkward. He wanted some babies like the friends that he already has, so he figured the correct approach there was to borrow their father.
Okay.
Yeah. The boy child's 5th birthday is next week, so we are deep in the when is my birthday, is my birthday today, when is my birthday situation.
Yeah. And is he also at the stage where he has a lot of plans for what the birthday will be like?
Only about which tractors he's getting. I don't...
Oh, I see.
He's excited that his friends are coming over.
Not so much the party planning.
Yeah, no, he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not really planning anything. I mean, there'll be food and cake, and then I'm going to throw them all out the back door and lock it behind them. It's supposed to be warm and sunny, and it's a lot of 5-year-olds, and part of the issue with having children close in age who go to a school where a lot of kids are close in age, between siblings, is that when you invite one kid, you usually have to invite 2 or 3 kids, which is totally fine. But, it's sort of a large feral pack of children rather than the whole, one child per year of age. And I'm like, and then a boy child invited 2 of his preschool teachers and their respective children, and we're a more the merrier kind of group, so that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah. Everybody will have fun.
And are you in a community where the adults stick around, or is it more of a drop off and go type
I'm
situation?
hoping that at least some of them will stay.
Right.
I generally, we're just getting to know a lot of the kids' friends and their families well enough to feel comfortable with just dropping them off.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, there's kind of like it's one of those unknowns, right? Like, am I supposed to drop my kid off? Am I supposed to stay? I don't know. Like, if the invitation doesn't say, and I don't know the parents, around that age, it's kind of always awkward to try and figure that out.
I generally offer to stay if they need assistance with anything, and then I don't feel bad if if they're like, oh, no, we have it totally under control. I'm like, cool. You said it, not me,
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
The nice part, too, about being involved in a community daycare and being on the board and everything is that I have folks who know a lot of the families in town really well, and so I can kind of tap them for information about, is this family reasonably okay to just drop my kids off and not be concerned about it? Which is nice to have sort of
should I stick around?
An inroad on family dynamics.
Sure.
How are things at your place, Arlene?
Things are pretty good. Not too much to report on farm stuff. I mean, we're in that stage of the year where, you're just kind of doing the everyday chores. It's not warm enough to really start doing much other than the usual. A little bit of cleaning around, I suppose, maintenance type things. And not a ton of new calves. We had, I think, 2 or 3 last week, but that's typical. On the social side of things, our Holstein Club had our barn meeting this weekend. So that is basically just like somebody offers up their barn every spring. We have a gathering. There's snacks. They judge a class of cows. Basically just an excuse to get together. So we did that on Saturday. And it was beautiful and warm. And there was so much mud. Like it was... My youngest, I stood him in the back of the van and pulled his boots off of his feet. And I had seen him playing in a pile of sand with some other kids, and that was great. But the amount of sand that came out of the boots in the back of the van was very impressive. Like I couldn't really get them off because so much sand had gotten in that his foot was like actually wedged into the boot. So we eventually reefed them off and shook them out and tried to get as much off of his pants as possible before he was allowed to go and actually sit in the seat. But it was a little bit of a messy place to try and get into, but it was nice to be with lots of other people from the community, so that was fun. And otherwise I don't feel like there's a whole heck of a lot going on. My husband's going away this week for a couple of nights to what's it called? It's the Canadian Dairy Expo. So it's like a trade show. There's a heifer sale, that kind of stuff. So he's going with a couple of friends. So I'll be milking here with, I think my daughter's boyfriend is maybe doing a couple of the morning milkings with me. So that he'll be hanging out with me in the mornings. And that's the week, I think.
That sounds not too bad.
I actually have a somewhat, I shouldn't say it because I'm sure it'll fill up before I even know what's happening, somewhat empty calendar this week. Katie and I went through a little while there where we were maybe a little overzealous and we booked a lot of interviews. So some weeks we had 3 or 4 interviews booked. So now the fact that we have a week with no interviews booked, I'm like, what am I actually going to do with all my time? Maybe I could, clean my house or something.
Oh, don't do that. You can find something better than that.
No, banish the thought. I won't do that.
Yeah. You don't want to start
I do need to do some organizing. That's not quite the same as cleaning.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't
I know the 8-year-olds, every pair of pants I put on, I think, I have to put those in the hand-me-down pile because they're getting too short. So I need to go to the closet, which I know has tons of hand-me-downs from other people in it. I'm sure there are tons of pants in there that will fit him, but I just have to haul it all out and figure out what is going to go into the drawers. So maybe that's something I can do this week. The spring organize, not the spring clean.
Yeah.
And are the flies back in your house?
I almost forgot. Product recommendation for the week. It's not generally something I do. They're not sponsoring the show. We got a sticky trap with the blue light on it from a company called Zevo. Z is in zebra. EVO. Purchased it in the pest control aisle at Walmart, but I'm sure they are available plenty of other places. It's just a sticky part like a fly tape, but it's about the size and shape of like an air freshener plug-in. And I plugged it in the kitchen where we've had this monstrous outbreak of something that looks like mosquitoes but doesn't seem inclined to bite people. I don't know what they are, but there's a fuck ton of them. Plugged this thing in, caught like 50 of them the first night.
Wow.
And then it got covered in flies and those Asian ladybugs. So I bought another one, and I bought some refills, and now I have one in the bathroom, which seems to be a hot spot for bugs to collect, and one in the kitchen, and I'm very excited. It's also nice because the blue light attracts them, but it's a little more covered up than like having a fly tape hanging over your sink which is usually where we end up by the middle of summer.
You end up getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get stuck in it.
Yeah, or the cat gets stuck in it, or your plants get stuck to it, and it's.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely in all the windows are starting to get filled with those, old farmhouse cluster flies. So
oh, the cluster flies, delightful.
Look into. Yes.
Yeah, and the Asian ladybugs, they fill up the window. The window frame between the screen and the window, and then the first time in the spring that you open the window, it just blasts dead bugs into the room, which is always a delight.
It's like potpourri, but not.
But gross.
Much stinkier.
And bad smelling. Yeah.
Yeah, but gross.
It's also spider season. This time every year they all come up out of the basement. All sorts of trapdoor spiders and wolf spiders.
Because it's too wet down there.
Yeah, I think so.
We're making our way upstairs.
Well, plus they heard there's bugs upstairs.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah. Our home is flooding. We're going upstairs.
Yeah, toss them back into the basement. And I don't kill them because for as much effort as I spend getting rid of, flies and such, it seems silly to kill the natural predators. So, but at the same time, I don't really want them parading around the bathroom while I'm trying to shower. So,
yeah. Spin your web somewhere else.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah. Especially because they tend to try to make their webs in the bathtub drain because they are hunting spiders who like to, in little holes. They can't swim now, which is a downside.
Yeah, not a good idea then.
No. Other than that, nothing. Whole lot of nothing.
Yeah. Well,
which is
now
excellent.
that we've done the bug report. Yeah. How about we go ahead and introduce our guest for this week?
Sounds good.
So today we are excited to be talking to Navaratnam Partheeban, who's a veterinarian joining us from the UK. And we start each of our interviews with the same question. And this is a way for you to introduce yourself to our listeners. And we ask, what are you growing? So this can cover crops or livestock, families, businesses, all kinds of other stuff. So what are you growing?
So thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm probably growing my career, growing my life, and learning about people around me and animals around me at the moment. So yeah, growing.
That's a lot of different ways of growing, right? And are you also a parent? I know this is a parenting podcast, so we always like to check in on that first too.
I am. I've got 3 children. I've got a boy of 9 and I've got 2 girls, 7 and 3.
So yeah, growing things at home too.
That's it.
Steve, can you tell us about your dog? I know we mentioned before we started the interview that you have a dog, but
I do. Yes.
Inquiring minds need to know.
I've got a little black. Well, she's an old black Labrador, so I got her when she was 8 weeks old, and she's a working breed. So her dad's from Scotland and her mum's from Ireland, but I've never really worked her since 3 years old. So now she's 13 going on 14, so she's an old girl, but yeah, she's been with me and she's come to work with me every day, and she's one of my longest term friends.
Do you have any other pets as well, or just her?
Well, I've got a tortoise called Columbo, who's about 3. I've got some chickens, between 10 and 15 depending on when the fox is here, and a bunch of koi fish as well. So that keeps me entertained at home when I'm not at work, really. But yeah, feeding all those mouths.
I'm sorry, having a tortoise is kind of like my life goal at this point. I know that they live a very long time, and I feel like they probably would not like the climate in Iowa, so I don't think it's ever going to happen. But
well, my tortoise is living indoors, and actually it was meant to be a birthday present for my wife, because she kept telling me she'd always wanted a tortoise, and last minute I couldn't think of a present for her. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to really surprise her. I bought a tortoise and a table and everything. And just like my children, when I buy them pets, I'm the one that end up looking after it. So and then I've also started to tell my child that, look, when I pass away, that's what he's going to inherit to him. So I'm trying to train him, but yeah, it's a bit of a difficult moment at the moment trying to do that.
How big is Columbo?
Oh, just the size of your hand at the moment, and it'll probably grow to twice the size of your hand. But yeah, at the moment, it's he or she, I'm not really sure at the moment, is still indoors. So wait to see what happens.
I was envisioning one of the giant,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I think I'd be in the doghouse if I bought something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I was picturing you having that just stomping around your living room with your kids and the dog, and
Oh,
it seems.
I've seen weird things like that before. So yeah, I wouldn't be. Yeah,
I
not
suppose
sure.
maybe they'd make a good coffee table. You could sort of balance something across their back, and you'd
Could.
have to chase your drinks down, which might be a problem, but I
But
don't
if
think
they
they
move
move that
forwards,
fast.
you'd have to just move out the way because it wouldn't move for you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'd break a lot of things in the house.
Did you grow up involved in agriculture, or how did you become a veterinarian?
So no, I've always lived in. I was born and bred in Scotland. That's where I'm originally from, and I've always lived in the cities and towns. And my parents weren't involved in agriculture, but where they're from originally, they're from the agricultural background, and so they always talked about it in stories and things like that. But I never really had much contact. And actually, I did love animals. I loved reading about them and doing things with learning about them, and I enjoyed science. So initially I sort of did. My uncle was a vet, but he was living in London, which was about a 9-hour drive from where I was. So I saw him briefly, and he used to mention things, and he sort of put it in my head, actually marrying science and animals together, veterinary could be an option. So I did zoology first, and then when I was doing zoology, I just thought, well, actually, could I do more with animals and things like that? So yeah, my dream then became, to become a vet, and I had to study at Edinburgh, where I was from. So yeah, and then when I was in before I went to vet school, I had to just go and see some do a bit of farm experience and a bit of small animal experience. So I worked on a beef farm, just did a bit of labouring job, and I really enjoyed it. And then when I went to vet school, when you're doing, you see all these different animals. You're seeing dogs, you're seeing cats, you're seeing zoo animals. But there was a buzz that I got when I was working on the farms. So what I did is I spent all my summers working on dairies and lambing and all these things, and I got a buzz that I didn't get anywhere else. I just thought that's where I'm going to go.
So, how many sets of James Herriot novels did you go through?
I'll be honest with you, none. I've never read a James Herriot. This is the
Wow.
weird thing. Yeah, it's weird because I didn't really have any role models. I just literally my uncle was a role model, but he wasn't a role model as in he was passionate about his job and he was a vet, and I thought I could be like him. He was just like, he gave me the idea that veterinary exists for as a career. And actually I went blind thinking, do you know what, I want to go and see what it's like. But I didn't know any vets, didn't have anyone that I sort of looked up to at the time. So yeah, but when I was in vet school, I suddenly, being in that environment, I suddenly saw, certain figures who sort of took me under their wing or who did things that just made me go wow. And then, and then I started latching onto certain people like that. And it was
It's
actually
really,
a vet
yeah.
it was a vet in southwest Scotland. And I spent a lot of time in southwest Scotland. That's a huge dairy area, and I was working 100% dairy practice. And he just every evening he took me and we went over books and we went over examples and we went over all sorts of stuff. And he educated me. And I'd say he was my role model to becoming wanting to be a vet and wanting to be a dairy vet, which I eventually sort of did for a while. So yeah, I owe a lot to him. He was probably more important to me than a lot of people.
I think that's fascinating because I think one of the things we're really learning with the podcast is how important it is for people to see people doing the things they want to do, and to having that hands-on connection with things, because it's really hard to be something if you don't know anybody who does it or can't, to get your foot in the door. And especially if you're not growing up in an ag family, that it's a lot more difficult if you don't have that in with things.
Yeah, and I
It's
mean, we
true.
know that there's so few people in agriculture anymore, right? I mean, in North America, it's about 2%. I assume it's probably about the same in the UK. And
One UK.
one, yeah, yeah. So,
So much.
I mean, that doesn't mean that there's just a lack of farmers that like you experienced. That means that there's a lack of connection with people who then end up working in the industry too, right? Whether that's veterinarians or, I mean, I know that our feed companies and our equipment sales companies are always looking for farm kids, right? But there's to hire or train or like there's so many jobs out there for people who even just enter ag programs, because the service industry around our industry is huge, but there's less and less people even enrolling in those programs that support farmers or, food production, those types of things. So one of
Yeah.
the reasons we wanted to talk to you specifically was that you're the co-founder of the British Veterinary Ethnicity and Diversity Society. So what made you and your co-founder decide to start this group, and what's your mission?
So I was in practice. I was in clinical practice, and I'd sort of been qualified about 7 years. And when you're part of a sort of marginalised group, you do go through a lot of experiences, negative experiences. But what you do is when you're young. So when I was really young, I wanted to become a vet. So I wanted to get into vet school. When I was in vet school, I just wanted to pass my degree. And then when you come out of vet school, you just want to be the best vet you can be. You just want to be confident in what you're doing. So whenever you get these negative experiences, you sort of put it inside somewhere in your body, because you just want to perform, and you don't want to be seen as trouble. You don't want to spend any extra energy trying to sort that out when you're actually just trying to learn and survive, really. And that can go for any sort of, and that includes discriminations, whether it's sexism, homophobia, racism. You won't find many people moan or complain at university or in the early years of their career, because again, you also don't want to get a tag where you won't get employed by anybody else. So I've been, for years and years and years, I'm doing that. And again, in veterinary, just like in farming, especially as a person of colour, we're in a minority. So, only 3% of vets in the UK are minority ethnic, and 1% of ag minority ethnic. So again, even if I did have problems, where do I go and who do I talk to? So I just thought, I'll do it. And once I've been about 7 years qualified, I think it was a farmer who basically told me that he didn't want me on his farm based on the colour of my skin. And when that happened to me, I just thought, well, I'm a well qualified vet. That shouldn't be happening to me. I went to my bosses and they wouldn't support me. They supported the farmer over me. And I went to the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, our regulator. They wouldn't support me. I went to my association. They wouldn't support me. I went to our mental health charity. They wouldn't support me. Nobody would support me, and there was nobody there for me. And so what I did is I carried on working, and then I decided I left clinical work and I went to industry. I went to pharmaceuticals. And when I was in pharmaceuticals, what I suddenly saw was there were processes in place. There was, if you had an issue, there was somewhere to report, and a process would happen where you would find out within a certain time period. You'd know what had happened to that report. And also I just saw much more diversity among, the work floor when I was going out into different practices and seeing different people, which I didn't get when I was just working in a small practice in rural Somerset. So I just thought, well, okay, do you know what? This is not right for our profession. And if we want more diversity, more people in our profession, we need to be better. We need to support all people, not just certain people. So I thought, right, I'm going to try and fight this. So I tried to do it on my own. I tried to write letters to all these different organizations and say, look, you've got to do better. And none of them would take responsibility to do it better. And actually, it was really difficult on my own to try and make a change. And luckily, there was another colleague of mine who I actually qualified with, but I hadn't spoken to her for years. And I'd seen something on social media, and she'd written something about sexism that she'd been facing, but she was also a person of colour as well. So I wrote to her and said, look, the things you're facing, I'm facing too. You're facing obviously other things as well, but, maybe we should work together. And she said, and she was living about 450 miles away from me. But I said, look, let's do something together. So literally that night, we started a Facebook group, we started a Twitter account, and we came up with a name, British Veterinary Ethnicity Diversity Society, which is BVEDS for short. So we thought it's nice and quick and easy to say. And we thought, when you come with an association, you've got a bigger voice. And that's what we did. And actually, when we came back with an association with more people behind us, people started to open doors and listen to us. And it grew. And really, the first cause was to create awareness that there's a problem. There's a lack of diversity. There's no processes. What are we going to do about it? And then it grew. First about trying to support people of colour and ethnicity, but also as part of the bigger diversity picture, but also then celebrate it, also educate about it, and all those other different streams when we talk about diversity. And then, and it was all about veterinary to begin with. And then I was at a meeting one day, and the CEO of the Royal College we were talking, and I said to her, look, we can't do anything about farmers and agriculture, but we can change vets because vets is a profession. And she said to me, why not? Why do farmers get away with it? Or why do people in agriculture get away with it? So I went home and I thought for a while, and I thought, she's right, why don't we do something about it? And that's when then I took on agriculture as well. Because I thought, you know what? Veterinary and agriculture are very, very similar in a lot of ways. And actually, if we can make a change or we can do something that works in one sector, we can apply it to the other sector. And I just thought this is an opportunity to bring everyone together. So I wrote to the National Farmers Union and I visited them, and I went to a lot of other different organisations, and it's grown since then. And we are here today.
That's amazing that, I mean, not that it was a small, it was kind of a small start, but that accumulation, right, of, things over time where it's like, there's a limit, right, to what you can take, and that then builds into something bigger and creating a system. Because those, as much as sometimes we complain about the system, those systems are what we need, in the background. Hopefully, when everything's smooth sailing, then, it's fine. But yeah, to have those checks and balances and to have a network behind you to know that, yeah, if there's a problem, that there's someone out there who's got your back. Or because so much of both veterinary medicine and farming probably feels very solitary and individual at on a day-to-day basis, but it is, there is.
And also, and when we talk about this sort of things, it's, we talk about one of the biggest crises in agriculture, farming, veterinary is mental health and suicide, all those things. It's all linked. When we talk about marginalization of people, when we talk about discrimination or isolation, and mental health issues, it's all linked together. And actually, if we start to tackle it and start to break that down and bring in more inclusivity, then actually we can tackle a lot of problems in one go.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, your experience is really a testament to the fact that if you put a big, important sounding name on something, people will take you more seriously, because Steve sounds like some guy that maybe some farmer was rude to him, and now maybe he's just like, somebody was mean to me. But the British Veterinary Ethnicity and Diversity Society sounds like a whole shitload of people who probably have good lawyers and need to be taken seriously. And I mean, yes, it's total bullshit. They should take you seriously because you're a human, and especially because you're an educated professional human who is there in a professional capacity and deserves to be treated as such. But sometimes, slapping a fancy name and a logo on something makes a huge difference in what people's responses. Sorry, the puppy's over here making weird noises. So we're a North American based podcast, and Arlene, I think in the US it's 1% are egg related jobs. But knowing that you've worked both in the UK and in the US, what similarities are there in the veterinary community between the two places, and what differences have you found?
So yeah, we've done a lot of collaboration with US organizations, and in fact I did a talk with the American Association of Bovine Practitioners about these things. So the similarities are, if you look at the number of minorities in veterinary, both percentages are very similar. There's not much difference if you look at population to the number of people studying. And I think that, again, it's quite a privileged sort of profession as well. So it's, again, you need to be social, your social class has to be quite high. You need to be fairly wealthy to afford to do the degree. You need to have the connections. Again, in the UK and in the US, it's very rare that people just get in there without knowing anything about it. A lot of people might know a vet or have been to a vet. Again, access to animals. A lot of people in the city areas, both in the UK and the US, won't have access to animals. And again, where do you get the inspiration and where do you get that experience to get into vet school? And finally, I think academically, vet schools, unfairly put a high level required to get into vet school. But I think, again, we're starting to realize that the best vets aren't the most academic vets. And actually, we can, there are a lot of people who academically might be brilliant, but practically are fantastic. And we need to bring them into the sector as well. So those are similarities. I think both US and the UK have the same similar situations like that. I think where the US differs is, first of all, the number of support organizations or groups there are, which, like, for example, the Black Veterinary Association, the Hispanic Veterinary Association, the Multicultural Veterinary Medical Association. If you look at all the vet schools, they've got a lot of groups, identity groups in there as well. That's which then form together to form the big conferences. Numbers, again, you could have, even if you have one conference and you only get 10% of the minority vets, if it's a minority vets conference, it's going to be bigger than big conference in the UK, for example, because you've got a numbers thing. The UK, we're only 71 million. I think 300 million is the US, so we're a much smaller country when it comes to numbers as well. So I think that, and I think also maybe, for example, one thing in the US is 80% of all Black veterinarians come from one university. So there's a lot of, not want to use the word segregation, but again, there's a lot of people going to the same place, and I think it's because they recognize it, they know it, and they'll feel safe there. And so again, creating that widening participation in the other universities is still early days, whereas in the UK it's not like that. It's fairly well spread out when we talk about minority vet qualifying. So those would be my top line differences, really.
Well, I'm going to move our questions around because that statistic about 80% of Black vets coming from the same university really blew my mind. I grew up outside of Ames, Iowa, which has Iowa State University, which is one of, I think, the bigger and well-known vet programs in the country. And to be honest, I didn't know that Tuskegee even had a vet program. And so I think there's a lot of great things to be said. For anyone who's not familiar, Tuskegee is a historically Black college. And I think there are a lot of wonderful reasons for Black students to go there. But as a student who went to a lot of, veterinary open houses at the university as a kid, and a lot of those career day sort of things, if I had been a person of color, I would not have seen anyone who looked like me. And so it's interesting to me to think about what everyone gathering at one place does to what kids see anywhere else, and not that people should have to sacrifice their own lives for being visible for other people, but it does, it must have an impact that such a large percentage are going to the same school. And I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting because 80% is a very large percentage of people going to one university. Anyway, blew my mind, but that's as far as I got with asking my question, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I think it's about how do you prepare people for the workplace as well, because again, you're going to be in a safe environment at university, but then when you go into the clinics again, then you're going to be back into being one of the only people in that clinic. So yeah, I suppose that's going to be, that's interesting to see how they do prepare vets to go out into the workplace, and when they go back home, wherever they come from the US, it's going to be very different from at that university. So yeah, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be pros and cons with all those sort of things.
Maybe you already covered this, but what are the statistics in terms of ag vets of color? Because I'm just assuming, based on the things you talked about in terms of, where people are coming from and the experience they already have, are the majority of vets of color going into small animal practice?
Yeah, so I would say there are probably 5 vets of color in farm animal practice in the whole country, and I'm one of them. You're talking to 20% of the farm vets of color in this country. There's probably 3 or 4 equine vets, and the rest will be small animals.
Right. Yeah.
And again, it's because, again, a lot of people of color come from cities and towns. And so when they've qualified, that's what they know, that's where they go, that's where they've had the positive experiences, and they go back. Where, again, it's coming out to the countryside, you need that support network, you need that positive experiences. Again, in the countryside, if you do get racism or sexism or homophobia, then it is going to put you off thinking about a career in the countryside. So you're going to feel like going back into the city where there's going to be more diversity. but there are, we are trying to change things in the UK, and there are more programs in the UK. When I was in the US earlier this year, I saw lots of different things going on to try and encourage more people of color to come out into the countryside and work in the countryside, whether it's farming or agriculture around that or veterinary. But I think, we need more programs, and we need more positive reinforcement of people visiting the countryside and enjoying it.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, as we get more, people get more specialized, and we talk all the time about farms getting bigger, and our animals are even getting more concentrated, right? Like you're talking about working in an area that's primarily dairy. That happens regionally, right? Where there's
Yeah,
a lot of dairy farms in certain spots, or like in where I live, I think I only know of a couple people who raise pigs. So like if you've never had exposure to that specific type of animal, or vets are going to learn about lots of different things, but then if you never practice on them, then
that's it.
that those skills then get lost over time, right? Or same as
Yeah,
when you're going into veterinary medicine, if you've never even touched a cow, then the likelihood of being comfortable operating on one or handling
that's
one
it.
is going to be
That's it.
less, right?
And,
And
and, and
most of
also,
us,
like, our insurance won't cover us anyway. So if I try to operate on a dog or a cat or a horse now, and something went wrong, my insurance will be like, look, you haven't touched one for 13 years. Well, you got no
yeah, that's
chance.
right.
So
Yeah, we know that you haven't practiced in a while.
Well, and
um
oh, sorry, Arlene, I wonder too what impact that has on what students are even learning at vet school, because I know around here there are so few sheep farmers that our vets say, well, we didn't really learn anything about sheep in school, and now we don't see them in practice, except for like club lambs. um and so they're Googling, which is, I mean, they're still a lot more qualified than I am, but it's a little
when you call
terrifying when
someone to
it's your
look at one of your
animal
sheep.
they're
Yeah.
working on, and they've got their phone out Googling. I appreciate the
yeah,
effort, and but if you're going to school in an area that doesn't raise X, Y, and Z kind of animals, what are you learning about them? And that seems like that might be an issue as well with concentrating all the students towards one university, is that they're only going to learn what that university is teaching, which I'm sure it's a great program. Like, I feel bad, like I'm going to start getting hate mail from Tuskegee now, but I'm sorry, I don't hate you.
well,
I'm
went
just,
when I went to Alabama, and I went to a lot of the neighbouring farms. Tuskegee have a lot of relationships with those farms, and actually, what they were doing was they were supporting the farmers by buying equipment and things like that in exchange for allowing the farmers to let students come and learn on those farms. And I went to some goat farms, and I went to some cattle farms in Alabama, and it was fantastic. The farmers felt that they were getting something out of it. A, they were providing for the university, but B, they were getting feeders and little barns built and things like that. And the university was also able to do a bit of research and allow the students to do research. And I saw a few different groups of animals that were being studied for different things by the students. So I think that Tuskegee, for example, is being pretty proactive. I don't know what the small animal and equine's like, but when the farm animal, they were reaching out and trying to get those experiences ready for their students when it comes to the farm animal side. And I was impressed, and I learned a few things about how maybe we could do things better in this country. To be honest, it was a good program.
So I know that you are doing, is it Newfeld or Newfield? Is that how you say it?
Nuffield,
Nuffield.
Nuffield.
Nuffield. Oh, I wasn't even close. So you are a Nuffield scholar, and I honestly didn't know much about the program until a few years ago when a friend of mine was part of a class. Can you tell us a little bit about the program and your individual project? And I'm hoping that you still got to do some traveling, even though you were kind of in those pandemic years. Maybe that was it. Some of the travel you've done in the States, was that linked to the program?
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. So the Nuffield Farming Scholarship, what happens is every year, it started in the UK, but actually it's now there's a program in Australia, there's a small program started in America, Canada's got a program, and then there's South Africa, I think, and the Netherlands. So, but it started in the UK, and the UK's got the biggest cohort of scholars. So as long as you're under 42, I think, and you're involved in agriculture in some way, you can apply to do a study, and it's a traveling study. So what you do is you come up with a title. So it could be lameness in sheep, for example. You fill in an application form, you get an interview, and then what they do, they find a sponsor who will sponsor you. And what the sponsor do is they'll give you money, and then after they'll give you money, and what you need to do is you need to travel for about 8 weeks, part of your study, to learn about this topic, so you can bring back the knowledge to the country of where you're living and share that in industry. So, you know, people do anything from arable to horticulture to livestock, education, all sorts of different things. And it's been going on for a very long time. And then what you need to do is, once you've finished your studies, you need to present it at the conference. And this year's conference is next week, which I'm presenting at. As you present your study at the conference, and then you have to write a report, which anyone can read, which is online at the Nuffield website, and produce a little video. And then after that, because you've studied that topic in so much detail, you get a lot of interviews, or a lot of organizations will come to you and ask you about how you can help and how you can use it. Some people use it for their own business. So again, if a dairy farmer has gone out and learnt about mastitis, they can come back and try and do a better job, or improve, or be gold standard at mastitis treatment or whatever. So yeah, so that's really what the study is. So I applied in 2021, and I was lucky to get a scholarship. So my topic was encouraging and supporting Black and people of colour in agriculture. I originally made the title encouraging and supporting ethnic minorities in agriculture, veterinary and farming. But in the UK, ethnic minorities also include Eastern Europeans and also Scottish people in England, which is where I wanted to look at really about people of colour. So I changed my title throughout. And I was sponsored by McDonald's UK and Ireland. So they're very keen. They were looking at internally their workforce, their farmers, and they were really keen about improving diversity. So hence why they sponsored me. And originally I wanted to go to Australia and look at working with the indigenous population, Aborigines, and the new Australians at the moment. I want to look at New Zealand for the Maoris and the new New Zealanders there, and then come to the US and learn about Black farmers, indigenous farmers, Hispanic farmers. And then COVID hit, so I couldn't do any traveling. But the thing for me is I really wanted to finish it. You normally got a year and a half to finish your studies, but they gave us an extended time because of COVID. And when the borders started opening up, I thought to myself, well, I need to get out and I need to start. And the US was the only country that allowed British people to come in first. Australia and New Zealand will shut their borders completely. And actually, it was a good thing that I didn't wait, because even now, it's still not the easiest place to get to. So
yeah, they were pretty restricted for a long time.
It's very restricted, exactly. And also we get a budget. And again, I wanted to make best use of budget, and airfares are ridiculous. And so I thought, okay, let's look at the US. And the US, for me, it's not one country. It's a lot of, each state's like its own country within a big country. So I wanted to break it down. So I did a bit of research about the US. And what I found out was, and I really wanted to go to the South. I've always wanted to go to the South. That was my dream. So how could I integrate something I wanted to do with my study? And what I learned was, I learned a little about agriculture, and I learned that, and so my first trip, I went to Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and Louisiana. And that's because in the US, these states have the highest percentage of minority farmers. So they've got a 6% minority farmers, when the US average is 1% out of all the farmers. So I thought, okay, if I visit those states, well, I'll go and, visit universities, museums. So what I did is I followed Martin Luther King's journey through those states. I followed, saw where Rosa Parks was. I went through all the major cities in Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, and Georgia. And I visited universities, Mississippi State University, and also talked to farmers, went to the vet school in Tuskegee. So I tried to sort of just get, and also I'd looked at sort of things like sports. I went to some of the baseball and learned about, the black baseball leagues and things like that. And the Army, again, I wanted to learn about, recruitment and things like that. And also learn about slavery in the American history. So I did that, and I came home and I thought, right, should I, where do I go next? And then I thought, well, actually, I don't think I've finished in the US. There's more to learn. And then I learned that Texas has got the highest number of minority farmers in the US. And as a state, Texas has got the highest number of farmers, full stop, in the whole of the US, but high number of black and minority farmers. So I thought, well, let's go to Texas and let's go and learn. And actually, there was a conference as well, the Southern Farmers Conference, which was actually a really proactive conference about talking about Indigenous agriculture and things like that as well. So I landed in Austin and I traveled around the Texas. And again, I did the same sort of things. I tried to visit universities and talk to farmers. And I visited this conference. I talked to Marines, Irish ethnic Marines who were part of a program and getting back into farming and how they were doing that. And yeah, it was fascinating. And so what I did is I did all that. And also, say when I came back to UK, I did a bit of a tour of the UK and just picked up what we're doing already in the UK. And then my work was, well, how do we see what we're doing in the UK, see what they're doing in the US, what are our similarities, what are differences, what are they doing better over in the US, and what can we learn from it? And that's what I'm presenting next week at the Nuffield Farming Conference in Cardiff. And again, they've created a school of sustainable agriculture with McDonald's are working on, and McDonald's want to integrate my findings into that school. So again, we're trying to see if we can diversify and encourage more people to come and study agriculture.
Yeah. So we will be sure to be paying attention when you do your presentation, because
Thank you. It'll be available on YouTube. So,
yes,
once it's available, go to the Nuffield website and you can watch it.
So the McDonald's program, is that UK based? The one like they sponsored you, but is that an international program that they're looking at, or it's something that's originated in the UK?
It's originated in the UK, yeah. So it's going to be a UK thing, and I've done a few different things with McDonald's. So again, I was talking to McDonald's came to me about 3 or 4 years ago, and they know I was talking about diversity. And they said, Steve, what can we do about diversity and stuff? So I said, look, I'm doing this study. Think about maybe if you're interested in sponsoring me, go for it. And yes, they did. And I said it'd be really good if we create a scholarship for some young people of colour. And what I do is I mentor them and I look after them, but we take them through. And because I'm a director of the Oxford Farming Conference, and if we attach them to the Oxford Farming Conference, but we create a little programme for them and make sure that we, do things with them, then maybe that might be a way going forward. And yeah, we sponsored 2 people a year to do the scholarship, and this year we've got 5. So next week I've got the scholars with me, and I'm taking them on a field trip around some farms, and we're going to look at different production systems. But again, it's about giving them the best experience and giving them those contacts, and they can therefore just thrive in the sector and go forth. So McDonald's has sponsored that. And again, we've got other things that we're going to talk about in the pipeline going forward to see how we can grow it.
That's great, because so much of, any industry, but it seems like ag in particular is about those connections, right? It's about it's about both knowledge that you have yourself and the knowledge that you gain from, in lots of cases it's previous generations, but when you don't have those generations behind you necessarily, or maybe those generations grew up in other countries or in other systems even, then to create those connections in the place where you live, because there's so much knowledge based in small regional areas, right? When it comes to agriculture, even if you've got skills from somewhere else, it doesn't always translate easily.
No, agree.
So, Steve, how often do your kids use your work with McDonald's to leverage more Happy Meals? Because I know my kids would be all over that. They'd be like, well, Mom, McDonald's did give you money, Daddy.
Yeah, I know.
I know my kids would be all over that.
Whenever we go to McDonald's, they always say, this is paying for your trip, isn't it? And I'm like, well, in a roundabout way, it is. But yeah, no, I think they're sick of me talking about McDonald's, because I at first I was quite skeptical about McDonald's, but actually, because they've been so supportive, I am a fan now. But yeah, they I think they like it, and I think it's given them sort of ideas going in the future, how to go about it. And I like what and because I think McDonald's in the world, they're actually quite country specific. So even though they're part of a global company, actually McDonald's in the US and McDonald's in the UK and Ireland are quite different companies. So they've got a little bit of freedom to do the things they want to do, and then maybe teach others. But yeah, I also use McDonald's to hopefully leverage other companies to say, look, if you want to make a difference and do things, look, this company's doing this and this is what they've done. So, if, like, for example, a big bank, you could easily do it. You've got the money and the resources. You just have to actually commit to doing these things. But yeah, I think yeah, McDonald's is definitely been positive. And also when I go to the head office, the middle floor is just a free McDonald's. You can have anything you want, so that's always a bonus.
Nice. Not to
I'm
just
just-
jump on the McDonald's Love Fest, but I will say, even in Canada, like you said, they're a lot different. That the Canadian, their advertising is not fear based like some of the other fast food chains are, where sometimes it's all about what they're not serving. But I will say Canadian McDonald's is very much talks about, like, this food isn't possible without Canadian farmers, and from a fast food restaurant, that actually goes a long way.
Well, when we had McDonald's as well, the other project they sponsored for the Nuffield was someone looking at regenerative agriculture with livestock. So what they're doing is they're going around. They've gone to Australia now. They were in the US. They started off in New York and went across, and they were looking at how do American farmers, or now Australian farmers, are using livestock as part of a regenerative system. So again, there's a lot of different type of projects, and again, a lot of different types of sponsors as well that are sort of keen about helping out in that.
You've worked in a lot of areas of vet medicine, including education, clinical practice, and in the industry. What are some of your favorite and least favorite parts of each of those ways of being a vet?
Yeah, I think the one thing people don't realize, especially when they are vets, is it's a passport. It's not just you're a clinical vet in a clinic or on a farm treating a cow. And that's it. That's what you're taught at vet school. And that's when 99% of people come out and that's all they think. And then they get frustrated. But actually, it's a passport because you do so many things. And that's what I did. When I went into pharmaceuticals, I was working for a French company, which was brilliant because I get to go. I went to Europe a lot. I went to France a lot, and I get to meet lots of different European colleagues, see lots of European farms. But also, I covered the UK and Ireland, so I got to see lots of vets all over the country. And I studied in Ireland for a bit. When I was in education, formal teaching is such a new thing. It's so different from just going, look, I'm going to have a few people with me and just talk to them. And I was teaching at the Royal Agricultural University, so I was a livestock lecturer. So again, I had to learn about farming a lot more because a lot of my knowledge was very, very technical. So I got to do that. And actually, when I was at the university, I bought my own flock of sheep. So I started farming my own sheep. I also managed the university's flock, and I also managed the university's calf rearing unit. So again, getting stuck in, monitoring them, having a farm hand with me, it was brilliant. I was farming on the side, I was teaching, and I was doing a little bit of research. And I actually got a chance to come to the US to learn about dairy farming, and I visited California and Wisconsin and saw that. So that was another really good experience. I think the negative things with my pharmaceutical job was driving a lot. I was on the road 3 or 4 days a week. I wasn't really seeing much of family. In the education sector, there's not much money. You've got to take a massive pay cut if you want to do that sort of thing. But actually, when you work with a student and the student starts off not quite unsure, not really keeping quiet to themselves, and by the end of the year, they're the ones who keep coming to you, wanting to do this, wanting to do that, speaking up and doing things. I think that's one of the greatest joys ever. And when I was on those farms as well, I tried to make it as practical as possible. So if I was vaccinating sheep, or if I was clipping sheep, or if I was doing a cesarean, I'd always make a call out, and you'd always have these bunch of students. I think that's sort of seeing their faces and seeing them learning, I think, was such a joy. And then I worked for an American Israeli nutrition company, livestock nutrition company, and again, learning about American business was very, very different. The way Europeans do it, the way the Americans do it is very different. But yeah, I loved it, learning about that and being on the cutting edge and looking at the technology. Going to Israel a couple of times just to learn what they're doing. But again, as a vet, I was working in the nutrition sector, and I wouldn't say my knowledge was that great when I started, but being around those people and talking to different people, I think was excellent. And now I've come back into clinical practice, and I'm back on farm treating animals and loving it, because I think what I've done is, because I've left the sector and gained so many skills and experiences, I've brought it back into clinical work, and I feel like I can contribute more to my practice, contribute more to the farmers. Again, I've got different stories that they might not have heard from any other vets, and again, that relationship with the farmers as well, I can offer them things that I've probably seen in industry that other vets probably won't know about, and I can go, look, have you heard about this? Have you doing that? So yeah, I think so, and I've got a much better work-life balance as well. So now I can come home with see my children and my wife, and work around that as well, which I think as I've gone through my career, originally my career was all about me being the best at my job, to me being the best father and husband, and it's a job, you know. And I think that's where I'm at the moment.
So I'm going to add a question in here. What you were saying about vet school admission. And I mean, obviously, it is very important for vets to be solidly based in science and to have a good understanding of these things.
Yep.
But, thinking especially about our large animal vets, how much of what makes them really good at what they do is personality and character and not science as much. What do you think the top traits are to make somebody, what traits do you see in people who are more successful as vets, um, rather than people who don't love it? Because loving it seems to be the biggest predictor of whether people stay or not, and what their
Yeah,
success looks like.
I think first of all, I think good communication. I think the biggest issue is communication. And when things go wrong, it's because it was communicated badly. And when things go well, it's because it's communicated well. And I think vets, you know, a lot of vets are academically brilliant, top A students, but they just haven't got those sort of personal skills and people skills. And I think you were saying that earlier. That's really important. How well you get on, and especially with a farmer, it's not a one-off relationship. It's a long-term relationship, and you don't just know the farmer's cows. You know the farmer's life. You know the farmer's likes and dislikes. You get to know them on a bigger scale. You go to the family, and you sit down with them sometimes for a bit of tea and whatever. So I think it's having that communication and feeling like you involve yourself. You can't just be like, I do that and I walk away and we have that relationship, because then someone else comes in, it can suddenly change. You want to keep, end of the day, veterinary practice is a business, farming is a business, and we need those relationships. And I think that's really, really key. So understanding the farmers, understanding their business, understanding who they are, I think is lost sometimes, but I think that's important. And I see some of the best farm vets actually have just done veterinary. They haven't got any more letters after their name, but they just go out and they talk to the farmer about other things first. They can treat the cow. And even if they don't know, they like if the farmer and the vet get on well, the vet can go, look, I don't know what to do right now, but I'll go and find out for you and I'll come back. And the farmers appreciate that, because that means the vet's going to try for them. Whereas somebody who's very academic might then try and trip up on themselves and just, try to do something that might go wrong. And then they don't know how to say, what went wrong. And then it all goes, when I've seen mistakes, that's what's happened. So I think communication is a massive thing in veterinary. And I think we're doing more and more about that. And I think the other thing is that a successful vet, I think, are vets who manage the work-life sort of thing. So I think some vets think that work is their life, and other things. And I think sometimes then you get too involved, they get too bogged down, and then they lose sight on where they want to be and what they need to do. And I think if they have a healthy relationship, then it's more sustainable. Whereas if they go from one extreme to another, it's really, really difficult. So I'd say for me, the best vets I've seen are people who have a life outside of veterinary, who actually do other things, and actually people who like to talk, who are pretty chilled out and listen and engage, and then think about what they're going to do, rather than just gun ho, this is what we're going to do, and then we walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially I think when you're dealing with animals, right? You really do have to listen to the person who is telling you there's something wrong, and ask the right questions to figure, because you can't just walk in and it's not a human patient, right? Where you can ask them. So that communication with the owner, the farmer, really is essential for figuring out right from the beginning what the problem is.
Exactly. For example, the other day I went to go and see a sick goat. A goat was down, and I had a student with me, a young student, and we went to this goat, and it hadn't been getting up for about a week, I think. And the farmer was looking at it, and I said to her, look, this goat the most, what do you think? What do you think about this? And she said, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's going to do well. And I said, look, your animal's better than me. Look, there's some options here. I can look at it. We can treat it. in my opinion, I think the prognosis is poor. When a goat goes down, it doesn't get up. You're telling me similar sort of things. Would you, do you think we should put this thing to sleep, because that's probably best for it? And she said, look, yeah, I know this goat. I've had it since a kid. I would prefer that. I said, I think that's best for it as well. And so we communicated it. I went straight away and I didn't do anything else. I just put the goat to sleep. And then the student came to me afterwards and said, well, why didn't you do an examination? And why didn't you take some bloods? And why? I said, look, we could do all that, spend all that money and give false hope to that farmer, when I know in my experience that that's not going to work, and she knows in her experience it's not going to work, and we've communicated that together. Now, if she said to me, no, I don't care how much it costs to spend, I want you to solve it, I would have done differently. But I could see it in her face that she was already ready to let it go. And I said, those are the sort of things that comes with experience. You can't be taught that, really. But again, when you talk to the client, you start to get those vibes that you think, okay, do you know what? I think this is probably the best thing. And so I think the student found that difficult, because in vet school you talk like, animal down, you do this, you do this, you do this. And I was like, no, you need to talk to them and find out, what are their expectations with this case as well, rather than you just, thinking that you can save everything, because you can't.
Yeah, that's right. And the money factor is, it's important too, right? I mean,
It's
farms, like you said,
100%.
farms are businesses, and if you go in and run all the tests every time, then you're not going to be their favorite vet either. All of a sudden their vet bill has gone through the roof.
It's true. But all young vets do it, and then you learn over time.
Sure.
I think that speaks so much too to the importance of trust between the vet and their human clients, because I know for us that the level of communication between our vet is part of a practice, but our normal vet and our family has been such that we have a lot more faith in her judgment, because she shows faith in our judgment and our knowledge of our animals and our business, and vice versa. And I know we were in a similar situation with the dog a few years ago as to your goat, that I brought him in. He was obviously not right. And she said, you can drop $5,000. I can about guarantee it's nothing that can be fixed. It's going to be a really traumatic experience, and you'll be out $5,000 and still have a sick dog. And what we chose to do is to just wait until he declined enough that it was time to put him down. And as an owner, that made me feel so much more trust in her understanding of our family and of our business, that it wasn't a lack of caring about our dog, but simply that $5,000 and that much chaos was not going to be best for anybody, and it wasn't going to change the outcome. And I think that really cemented our relationship. And I mean, yeah, she comes over for supper. She's part of the family at this point, and that's what we need, because it does really improve the relationship that we have.
So I was reading a blog post of yours about equity and inclusion, and I'm using your words here, where you talked about equity meaning creating a level playing field, and inclusion making people feel like they really belong. So what kind of a difference does it make for you in your work, professionally and personally, when it feels like you belong?
Yeah, when I feel like I can be me, I feel like I can bring my whole time to work. I feel like I want to go to work, and I feel supported. I think those are the things that I think before I started, when I was young and I didn't have those things. And I think if you're hiding something about yourself and you feel like you can't say it, then it's difficult, feeling like you belong at a place and that you want to stay at a place, because everybody just wants to be themselves, I think. And so, and in agriculture, in general in the UK, as in veterinary, we have a huge dropout rate, people leaving the sector, because, and a host of reasons. It could be financial, it could be other things. But again, what they've proven is money doesn't really matter when people are happy in where they are. Like, you can throw as much money as you want at somebody, but if someone is internally not, there's something missing, something not right, they will eventually leave. They won't perform as they should do, and they will eventually leave. And so what and that was a big thing, even coming back into clinical practice. I wasn't going to come back into clinical practice. And actually I had asked the person who now employs me, she knew the person who was going to employ me, my job I was going to go for. I asked her for her opinion, what he's like. She said to me, he's good and stuff, but why do you come to work for us? And I said, I don't want to go back into clinical practice. She said, look, people are really important to me. For me, I want everyone to come here and be themselves. And I want to support everybody. And, if they've got interests, I want to support that. If they've got likes and dislikes, then I want to know that. And I don't want anyone to feel like they don't belong. And she talked for ages about people and about how important it was to have a team. This is a team and we all work together in this. And the success is only because of all of us, not because of one of us, and things like that. And for me, this was like, I was like, this is what I've been wanting. And I thought it never existed, but it exists here. And only at the end did she go, oh yeah, and by the way, this is what our clients are, this is what the type of work we do, this is pay. But actually she'd sold me already in the first 50 minutes. And I think so we've got to practice, young, old, male, female. We've got ethnic minorities, which is a rarity in this sector. We've got LGBTQ+, we've got all sorts of people in our practice. And we all get along, we all share who we are, okay? But we feel like it's a safe space. And also, if we've got issues with things or things that happen, we feel like we can share it. But actually, it means that our team is quite long lasting. Most people have been there for a long time. We don't have a problem recruiting because people want to join this team because they hear about it. Other companies want to know about it and what the secret is. So, we project, things that we do. We have a wellness board, we have a positivity board, we celebrate different people's celebrations. If people are celebrating whatever culture or religion they're from, we all celebrate in the practice to make sure people feel like that. We do those sort of things. We try and associate with other organizations that maybe are different, but actually we can learn from. And I think that, and also students, when they come and see our practice, they get that really positive experience of a farm animal practice. And then when they're with us on farm, they feel like, well, they've got someone like us on farm, so they can therefore experience working with livestock or near tractors and things, like knowing that they've got these people that are part of a team that's quite inclusive. And so everything's positive. So therefore, if they then decide, well, okay, what career do I want to go into? All they've got is good memories and good thoughts. So for me, I think inclusivity is really key. Equity is all about, well, not everyone starts off with equal fitting, like we talked about connection. Some people have connection, some people don't. Some people have that financial clout, some people don't. So how do we level the playing field? Those people who don't have those connections, how do we get them those connections? Or those people that financial difficulty, how do we create systems to bring them towards that? Those people with a lack of experience in farm animals, can we find a way of getting them that experience, getting them some nice farms where they're going to be safe, but they're going to get that experience. So, and then once we bring them to a level playing field where they're equal with everybody else, then giving them that really positive experience, part of inclusivity. And I think if we do that, we build in that stay rather than go psyche in people's minds and where they are.
Yeah, those two pieces really are key, right? Because you can, create scholarships and programs and recruit people, but if when they're done that program or they enter the workforce, if they don't feel that this is the place for them, you're right, they don't stick around, they don't stay.
No.
They'll find somewhere else to be. So yeah, both pieces are so critical for it being successful. And I mean, if the some people are always looking at the economics, right? But I mean, even just in terms of, retention and,
yeah,
those things, it kind of pays for the other stuff. Not that that's that's not a priority for some of us, but I mean, to even to defend those types of programs, then that speaks for itself, right? If you can recruit people and keep them in the industry that you wanted them to join in the first place, then
yes,
then all of those things are important.
100%. With diversity and inclusion comes diversity in thought, diversity in experience, diversity in skills. And if you look at the biggest companies in the world, Amazon, IBM, Nike, Coca-Cola, why are they so powerful and so innovative? Is because of the way they bring people in and make sure people, because when people are included, then they can therefore express themselves and express their ideas and have different ways of thinking. And especially as a business, that's so important when you want to compete in this marketplace that we have. And especially when things go wrong, or like, the economic crash, or what we've got COVID or whatever, you want people who can think outside the box to try and get us through these difficult situations.
Well, it seems to me that if a person coming into your team doesn't want to learn about new people, doesn't want to learn about different cultures or backgrounds or whatever, doesn't want to try new things, they're not the one you want on your team anyway, and they're not going to be happy there. Because, I certainly don't want the vet coming out who's refusing to learn new stuff or try different things or whatever, because that's not someone who's looking to grow and improve and be better. And that's just boring. It sounds boring to me. So as someone who does live in a unusually diverse area, what can farmers be doing to encourage non-farm people to be interested in agriculture? I guess Arlene has this further down in the script, but the town where my kids go to school is the home of a large packing plant. So I think 60 to 70% of the people in town are not white and not from this area, came from all sorts of interesting places and backgrounds. But how do we encourage their kids to be involved in agriculture because they're growing up, in town away from this background? And it seems like a great resource that is not being maybe invited into our community the best.
No. So another similarity between both of our countries is children and the makeup of children. So in the UK, so as a population, 14% of people are people of colour in the UK, but children, 33% of primary age. So children under 11 are children of colour, and 25% are under 18. So in the US, again, I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I know it's something very similar, where children of color is huge, and it's the fastest growing part of that demographic. So what you'll find is in a generation and 2 generations, these people are going to be in the marketplace looking for jobs, looking for careers, and so we need to really think about it now. One study that I have seen is children make their ideas up at about 6 or 7 years old. So really, if you want to inspire them, encourage them, put the seed in their head, you have to do it before 7 years old, because once you go past 7, you've missed the boat. And that's for anywhere in the world, really. There's a few studies about it. So I think the first thing is, I think the big barrier is the location of where farmers are and the location where all these kids are. That you've mentioned that earlier. So what do we do? And I think the greatest thing is social media. First thing you can do is social media. Use it, and I think learn about it. And the great, if COVID was negative for most things, the best thing it was how social media grew. And what I find is try and join groups online. Try and get involved in discussions online. And as somebody who doesn't know anything, listen. So, getting involved in whether it's a minority ethnic group, an LGBTQ plus group, a disability group, whatever group people get involved in, if you're not part of that group, or you don't know much about that group, just listen, understand the different nuances. You can ask questions of where do I find out more, use websites and learn more. The other thing is getting in front of those children and engaging with them, but engaging with those children in their environment rather than getting them to come to your environment. Because again, if they see you in their environment first, they're going to feel like they're going to find that relationship and understanding a bit more, because they're already in their safe place. So then when they come out to your farm, the farm is already a scary place. But if they already know that they've seen you in an environment that they're already familiar with, you break a lot of barriers that way. And then they can therefore put, well, okay, you're a safe person, and this is a farm. This must be a safe place as well. And it's about making those links, you know what I mean? Because if you take children straight onto a farm, it might make them excited, but how is it going to inspire them to have a career? And that's what we need to do. So it's about doing those different bits and pieces. Again, also when you're on farm, if you have someone else who maybe reflects those children in some way, come from the same area as them, looks a bit like them, um, maybe someone similar age to them, maybe another child, they're your own children. Again, something that the children can connect with. And then if it's on a farm setting, they can build all those things together. Because again, like if you just have an old white male farmer in front of a lot of girls of color, where is the connection? There's none. Whereas if you even have a young white girl, at least there's a girl to girl relationship. You know what I mean? Or if that farmer has a friend who's a person of color who can connect to those children and is on the farm at the same time, even though maybe something slightly different, again, the children can put all that together. So those are the good. And then it's about building it up. So something that we do in the UK, for example, is FaceTime a farmer. So every month, farmer just does a FaceTime and walks around and goes, "Oh, today I'm milling the wheat, or I'm cleaning the tractor, or we're going to sow the maize, or we're going to milk the cows," and having that regular relationship helps build it up so that the children don't forget. You know what I mean? And also getting the teachers to integrate that into their curriculum. So yeah, there's probably I could talk for another few hours if we wanted about how to do it, but those are the things. It's about making sure that the children you can't be what you can't see. And again, it's about how do the children connect to that career and that lifestyle. And if you can find as many things to make those children feel like that, then that's the best thing. So as a farmer or someone in the rural community, educate yourself and try and learn and try and involve yourself in as many groups as possible, because that's the best way to start to break down those barriers.
Yeah, I'm guessing your answer to a question that I had is going to be similar, but kind of in the reverse. The one thing I was thinking about is, as someone who came home to a community, came home to a farm where there isn't much diversity, how do we make sure that our kids are comfortable and know about diverse people and populations when what they see on a day-to-day basis is pretty much looks like them?
Yeah.
Looks a lot like them. Yeah.
I think so with children, what storybooks are they reading? Look at the authors, look at the types of stories, look at where the stories are from, diversify their reading lists, try to get them to talk about it a lot more. Even sort of learning with them. So if you're trying to learn, let's say about Ramadan, for example, sit with them and you can say, well, today I learned about this, and talk to them about it and get that engagement going. Online forums, again, there are online groups where children can talk to each other and try and get them involved with that, I think. So yeah, use social media, but I think it's things like reading lists and integrating it into what they're learning. If they're learning about history, you find out about something and tell them about it. Did you know Indigenous Americans used to farm on this bit of land? Or if they're learning about livestock, you talk about Indigenous farming with bison and the ways that maybe there's similarities. I don't know, it's about that conversation. So at home you have those conversations, so that it's not different or weird. And then if you have an opportunity to go to town and eat in different types of food and meet different people. But yeah, use social media if you can.
Yeah, I'm thinking too, even acknowledging the times when we're doing something and saying, like say around the holidays, to be like, I know that most of the people that are at your school, are celebrating the same holiday as us, but, here are some of the other things that other families are celebrating.
Yeah,
or,
100%.
Yeah, to just be aware of the fact that just because it's quote unquote normal for us doesn't mean that this is the only way, right?
No. Like they're a citizen of the world rather than just a citizen of a small area, and it's about giving them that bit of knowledge or that little bit of understanding that they're part of a huge community, and they can when they grow up they can when they experience it, these are the sort of things that they can go and learn about and see and enjoy, I suppose.
I think for me, that's been one of the most exciting parts of having the podcast, is how many people we get to connect with that we wouldn't see just in our small towns. Because I hear so much about, farmers hate people of color, farmers hate gay people, farmers hate this. And I'm like, well, we don't know any of these people. We don't see these people, or, we don't know that we're seeing these people. And so how can we positively engage with people that we know nothing about? And so I feel like the more we can connect people with people they don't know about, the more interested they can be and the more engaged they can be. And, you know, so basically what I'm hearing you say is that brainwashing children is the future. And I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So
We all do it, don't we, a little bit?
my kid's school isn't going to know what hit them. No, I mean, we're incredibly lucky to have this diversity in our town. And
Brilliant.
it makes me sad that it isn't seen as more of a real benefit, because I think it's really exciting. And, you know, if we're having all these people wanting to come in, and we should make them be farmers, because the number of farmers and the age demographic in our
If
area
they
is
want
not
to
great.
be.
Yes.
If they
Well,
want to
no,
be.
no,
You're not forced farmers. Kate.
forced farming
No.
for everyone. More chickens for everyone. There we go. All
But
right, well, now I
Arlene,
don't
sorry,
know.
I just want to go back to one point earlier.
Sure.
My children's school is very undiverse. So what I did is I bought them a whole load of books for the library and donated it. And I was hoping that, you know, once things like that you can do also to help with the local school, for example. So there's some really good diverse reading lists that you can find online, and that really help as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know our school, they recently, the public library and the school library used to be joined together. And for both security reasons and other community stuff, they're now separate. So they are looking at building up the school library again. So that's a good point. Maybe for since I celebrate Christmas and I know our teachers do, I can give give the library some new books about different holidays.
Arlene, I know as well that in our small town public library, the director is a friend who mentioned that often the library's budget is very small. And if the board is also very non-diverse, the likelihood of them buying more diverse books can be less. And so she said, you know, though, if they're donated, and especially if you put a in memory of or in honor of plaque in the front, you can put basically anything on the shelves. So
Right,
yes, I also
yeah.
have a very diverse list of books coming
Perfect.
for our local library, because
Excellent.
yeah, you know, the kids should see people who look like them, and they should see people who don't look like them. So,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, more books for everybody.
That's it.
So as a parent, do you hope your kids are involved in agriculture? And are they interested in any way now besides in ignoring their tortoise? Little tortoise friend? I want to see the tortoise. I'm just here for
Yeah.
the animals.
Just here for the animals. So my son's not interested. He wants to be a racing car driver, Formula One driver, and he's there's I don't know if you know in America Lewis Hamilton. So he's he's one of the greatest ever Formula One drivers, and my son's besotted. So I think he's a bit of a lost cause at the moment. But my daughter, she likes to follow me, and she's getting more and more interested. So I've been on call a couple of times where I've just had to look after. I've just had her, and I've taken her out when I've been doing some emergencies, and she was there to watch a cow cesarean recently, and she's seen me treat some alpacas and all sorts. And she keeps telling me that every time I'm on call, she wants to come out with me. So I think she's slowly getting that bug at the moment. And who knows? They've been surrounded by animals since they were little. You know, when I was calf rearing and things like that, they used to come out and muck out the calves and chase the sheep and ride on the back of my pickup and things like that. So they've had that experience. So they're not saying too much at the moment, but I can see my middle daughter is asking more questions. The good thing is actually they're very interested in where their food comes from. So you know, if there's any positive, they're very keen. And you know, when we talk about meat and things like that, they want to know where it's come from, how it's raised, the differences between two types of lamb from two different places. And so yeah, I think it's a lot. It's going to be a long run, but yeah, they do like animals. And my son loves animals, but I don't know his career's there. But my daughter might do. So we'll see.
So, as a parenting podcast, we often ask our guests what they're really enjoying about parenting, kind of in the current moment. So, what is your favorite thing about the ages that your kids are right now?
I love my son's age because we're talking more like friends rather than, we've got a lot in common now. So when he talks about motor racing and I can talk with him because I love it as well. So we have that, we can have long discussions about it, and we can sit in front and watch the races together. And I feel like it's like, when I had a son, that's what I felt like I could bond with him. So I'm really enjoying that. And feeling like, me and him are sort of got common grounds. I'm trying to convince him to support the same football team as me, but he refuses to. And I think that's a whole other story there. But so one day I'll crack him on that, because that's more important to me. But at the moment, I'm happy with motor racing.
I don't know. You said kids make a decision pretty early. I think he's already past the switching football clubs is probably not going to happen.
Oh, I know.
You'll be lifelong rivals.
But I think that's going to be my thorn in my side. My daughter, I think because she's got that interest in being with me and coming out with me, but also having a daughter. I've never really grown up with girls. I was with brothers. All my cousins were boys. I was quite remote, so it was just me and my brothers when I was in Scotland. So I didn't really grow up with girls. And actually, growing up, learning, seeing the world through her eyes, and understanding some of the things that I probably never saw that were in plain sight, but actually seeing it through, trying to look through the world for her, I'm going, oh no, that's not right, and that's not right, and why are they doing that? And actually, whoa, that's so. For me, that's a massive learning curve, but I think it's making me feel like I can do more, maybe going forward. So I'm really enjoying that, and also she started to take up Bharatanatyam, which is a type of Indian dance. So my aunt was a famous dancer, and now my daughter doing that. I feel like that family tradition's coming back, which is really, really great to see. And my youngest 3-year-old, she's a mummy's girl, so she won't come near me much, and she fights with me and shouts at me and tells me off. So I'm not enjoying that at the moment. She's not in nappies, so maybe that's a bit positive.
Sometimes you just have to pick
the
bar low, right? I'm sure she'll come around.
She'll come around one day. I'll have to give her more sweets and tempt her that way somehow.
So knowing that parenting isn't always easy or often easy, are you willing to share anything that you're struggling with as a parent?
Yeah, I think I'm struggling. Like, sometimes it's hard to know, are they getting education wise everything they need? Is school enough? Should I be doing more with them at home? Should I be spending time going through exercise books, getting them to read more, telling them to do their homework more? Or should I actually be like, look, this is a childhood. They're going to school. They're tired when they come home. Maybe they need rest because, again, they've got plenty of years ahead of them to learn. So sometimes I wonder, should I be more proactive in teaching them, making them study, learning? And I wonder, do other parents push their children, or do other parents leave it alone? And if I don't do it now and they don't succeed in the future, was it my fault? I don't know. So and then sometimes I think also, should I be sending them to lots of different classes? But then I think, well, are they just going to be doing lots of things and never having time just to be themselves at home and play in the garden? So and you sometimes see some of these parents and they're doing all these different things, and you just think to yourself, should I be more like them? Or actually just being chilled out and having quite a relaxed chat? Because again, they will learn when they want to, and I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm sort of not sure.
Yeah, sounds pretty similar too.
For our listeners, Arlene and I look like a pair of little bobbing head dolls down here at this one. I guess my feeling right. Oh,
I was just going to say there wasn't much I enjoyed about the pandemic, but the fact that all the kids' activities were canceled meant that piece of, should they be doing more? Should they be involved in more things? Like, are we doing soccer this year? Are we, like, all those decisions got taken out, and it was like, I guess family time's it, and, there was some freedom in the lack of options, I suppose.
I guess my feeling, my kids are 4 and 6 in just a few weeks, which is terrifying. I try to strongly encourage things that they seem really interested in, and I don't worry about the rest. I mean, I figure they're still little. They're going to learn to read and whatever eventually. But yeah, same thing, how I don't want them to miss out on things, but I also don't want to be a crazy overscheduled helicopter parent who's never home and, whose
Yeah.
kids are always exhausted. And it's definitely a balance of, I've been wondering about it already this morning, how hard to push the kids. And
Yeah.
we put my daughter in Clover Kids, which is like baby 4-H, and she loves that so far, but that's the only activity they're in. And everybody seems fine with that. So,
Yeah.
let them hang out. They're having fun at home. No, go ahead.
Now, I was going to say that when I love sport, and I've always thought I'd love my children to be a professional sports person, so that I can retire early and follow them around the world, just being their manager. So I put my son into rugby, cricket, football, everything, and he hates sport in general. So I've learned that don't push him too much, because we might want something, but they don't. They'll tell us.
Now you just need to buy him a really fast car.
He's already asked me, and I'm like, I don't afford enough.
Yeah. That's even scarier than rugby.
Yeah.
Arlene, since you have a kid who does drive and plays rugby, is the driving scarier than rugby?
In the moment, no. Watching her slam into other people is scary, but overall, I mean, I guess logically, I know that driving a car is probably riskier, but yeah, just scary in different ways. There's so many things to be afraid of as a parent. Just add that to the list.
But we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at a county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
I would want to dominate brewing my own beer. It's something that I've got into. I'm starting to get more and more technical about it. Before it was a bit of fun, but now I'm like studying hops, and I'm studying different mashes, and I'm studying different temperatures. And yeah, that's what I'd love to dominate in a country fair and have a winning brew.
All right. Well, Katie and I will nominate ourselves to be your judges or testers. Or
you're welcome.
any of those things. So I guess we'll move into our cussing and discussing segment. We've registered for an online platform called SpeakPipe, where listeners can leave their cussing and discussing entries for us, and we'll play them on the show. So go to speakpipe.com/barnyardlanguage, and you can leave us a voice memo, or you can always send us an email at barnyardlanguage@gmail.com, and we will read them out for you. Katie, what are you cussing and discussing this week?
Bit of a social media hot take today, Arlene. I am
ready.
Really frustrated by people who talk a big game about their independent nature and nobody can tell me what to do, and then if you confront them in any way, shape, or form, or question any of what they're saying, they say, well, that's not what I meant. Well, I don't really think all of that. Well, then why are you saying it? Because if you're intimidated enough by me to back down on your strongly held belief, it's not that strongly held. And I just find it frustrating. So basically, if you're going to say something obnoxious publicly, be prepared to double down on it, or be prepared for me to think that you're kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, be prepared to defend it, or
don't
say it in the first
place.
Or
don't say it.
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't have to.
I guess it's not really that much of a hot take. If you're going to say something ridiculous, be prepared to defend it. That's it.
Yeah.
All right.
And provide some resources and references, please.
Yeah. Thebe, what would you like to cuss and discuss?
Cuss and discuss. So I don't know much about this.
This can just be anything from the tortoise chewing on your couch to something interesting that happened to you this week, or something that's driving you crazy, whatever you want it to be. This is just a free for all at the end of the episode.
Okay. So I like to cuss and discuss. It's when you're given some jobs for the day. So today I was given 3 jobs to do, and then they try to throw in more jobs to make me do more in the same time, and I don't earn any more money. And like, without discussing with me, people just slip things in and send me on places. And I like to know, this is what I'm doing today, stick at that. What I hate is when people go, well, do you mind just doing that as well and doing that as well? When I say no, I need to do something else, they don't think about that. They just think about themselves. So that's my gripe for today, unfortunately.
That's fair, yeah. Especially as a vet, I'm sure there are enough unpredictable things in your day that you'd rather not get more thrown at you from. At first, I wasn't sure if it was your spouse or your workplace that was giving you extra jobs, but
I was wondering.
Well, I think I'm going to leave that open.
Yeah, exactly.
Arlene,
Okay.
what do you have to cuss and discuss?
I'm up. So yesterday, I was lucky enough to be able to volunteer on a field trip, and I will say lucky because I did ask to go on said field trip. And I mean, I always appreciate teachers and how hard they work, but especially after going on a field trip, I just want to say again that teachers are fantastic people, especially middle school teachers, because I was in the grade, my third child is in grade 7, so they're in that 11, 12 range. And in a pack in particular, that age of children are particularly challenging. So we'll just say cheers to teachers and thank you for all that you do, because one day is good for me.
Arlene, from the message you sent, it looked like you were at a hockey game
We were
with all of those children.
Yes. So it was a midday hockey game that was put on in our city for just school children. So there were yellow school buses as far as the eye could see around this giant hockey stadium. And someone said there were 19,000 school children in this arena. And I will say, I think as many were watching the hockey game as there were in line trying to get food, because there were a lot of kids who did not care about hockey, but really wanted to spend some money on food. So I'm not sure how much any of them even saw because the lines were so long, but it was an adventure.
I even really love hockey as much as any non-Canadian can, I think. And that sounds like the worst use of a day that I could I'm sure there's worse things, but that's right up there. There's oof.
It was interesting because like normally you go to a hockey game and they, they'll be like, make some noise or dance or whatever. And, a certain number of people in the audience will do those things. But when you have a whole stadium full of kids, things got real loud. But I'm sure that they had fun, and I had some Tylenol on the way home on the bus. So thank you, Thebe, so much for joining us today. If listeners want to find out more about the society, want to connect with you online, hear your presentation when it is available, where should they find you?
So I'm on Twitter at Navaratnam Part 1. I'm on Instagram at Scottish Tamil. You can look at the website at www.bveds.com for the BVEDS website, or you can email me at vetsfarm, vetsfarm@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you and to talk to you.
Thank you, and especially for taking the time the week before your presentation. Now I feel a little bad.
It's been fun.
Sure,
thank you very much. Yeah. Be more of this, basically.
Well, good. Then hopefully we were a reasonable warm-up for doing more of it.
Slightly less academic, I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, we encourage you to support us by becoming a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/Barnyard Language to make a small monthly donation to help cover the costs of making the show.
Please rate and review the podcast and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Barnyard Language, and on Twitter, we are Barnyard Pod. If you'd like to connect with other farming families, you can join our private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We're always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch. We are a proud member of the Positively Farming Media Podcast Network.